G'day. Today we are repairing a right-hand side Nintendo Switch controller. So you can see on the left here the light is working and on the right it is not. So I actually dropped this controller and the right-hand side stopped working, specifically the SL/SR buttons up here. So it still works sort of docked, but individually it doesn't, and the lights are not working there. So I've got some spare parts here. I've actually got replacements for both sides, but we'll only do one today. So first up, we need to remove the 4 screws, which are tri-lobe. If you don't have a tri-lobe screwdriver, you can use a small flathead, and that should work for you. Next up, we are trying to pry one of the edges open. You can try and use your fingernails or something super thin. Just try and clip one edge sort of open. Just really gently slide that around until you've got a bit of room for an opening, and then use something softer to pry it open. Here I've got the sort of plastic pick, and that just means you won't damage your actual case. So just very carefully pry this open, because there are ribbon cables inside, so you don't want to go tearing it open, because then you'll damage that cable. And so we just want to open it gently from this outer side, so the side that doesn't have the rail that connects to the switch, because that's where the ribbon cables are. So just very gently open that up. And there you can see the 2 cables that connect the SL/SR board to the rest of the controller. So step 4, we're just going to unscrew the SL/SR board. So this is the backing board for the actual buttons. See, these are actually Phillips head, but they're quite small. I think they might be a double or a 000. You can see my board turning on there, but that's just sort of remnants of the thing working. If you move it back and forward, it will show that it's broken. Next up, step 5, we need to remove those 3 battery case screws. And this is, I think it is necessary to just get better access to the ribbon cable, because it sits underneath this case and it's quite a small gap. So you don't want to go doing some damage trying to close and open that. So I think it's just best to open it up slightly. Step 6, we need to undo the ribbon latch. So this is the latch where the ribbon connects to the SL/SR board. So we've just undone the latch there, and there we go. We've got the part out, and you can see there's a bend in it, and that's been put behind the battery, and that's squeezed in between the battery and the actual back of the controller. And basically if you drop these or hit them a bit hard, you can actually break that cable. So we'll crack open our case for our overnight parts from Japan.
Overnight parts from Japan.
We'll put it on my tab at Harris.
And we'll just take that spare part out, and that's the replacement backing board. So here's just a comparison of the 2. They look pretty similar. One seems a bit thinner than the other, to be honest. I think the replacement looks a bit thinner than the original, but let's hope they function much the same. Alrighty, step 7. We need to screw in the replacement board. Now this is, people do this differently. Some may choose to attach the ribbon cable before doing this, but I actually think it's a bit easier to attach the replacement board back to that backing controller first. Just gives you a bit more control, I think, of the ribbon actually going back into the latch. These screws in general are pretty finicky. It might take you a little while to line that up. I'm just going to fast forward there, and we'll very carefully screw that back in. So there's 2 screws which get this board back into place. This is the first one. So just gently, doesn't need to be super tight when you're putting that back on. And we'll just do the other one. Alrighty, so with that ribbon cable reattached to the controller, we just need to do some further steps for better access. So we're just going to remove this antenna part there. It's quite easy, just that one sort of button connector, and that lets us move this battery case a bit further up. But we're also going to remove the battery, and again, this is just for better access into the compartment underneath. So just pop that out there, carefully put that to the side. And we're going to move the casing very carefully here because it's attached by another ribbon cable near the trigger. So we're just going to tilt it to the side and then turn it upside down. And then that gives us full access to the PCB with the latch connection. So step 11, we want to attach our ribbon into the latch seat. So you may have different success trying this with tweezers or like a screwdriver, but I just think use your fingers or your thumb and sort of hold the ribbon in place, and then I'm just using my nail there to very slightly close that latch over the ribbon. And you sort of need to be conscious of the parts hanging off here because you don't want to go tearing those cables, but just give it a little pull to make sure that it's attached correctly, and that looks pretty good there. We'll take a closer look at what that should look like. And you can see the ribbon cable, the 2 little nodules on the side are right up against the latch, so that's where you want it to sit. Sort of a bit clear there. Okay, step 12. Replace the casing, again carefully, so we're just going to reverse those steps we did before. So just flip it back over and over the top. Just make sure the battery is sort of out of the way and those cables are too. And you just want to make sure that casing sits over the trigger correctly, like that. There we go. Step 13, replace the battery, so just flip that around and that slots in there. And then the antenna. It's a little bit finicky, this thing, so there's a slot, but then also, just slot it in there. The actual cable has a little button connection, so I've just used some tweezers there to push it back in. Just with a bit of pressure there, and that'll snap back on. And we'll just use the tweezers there to push that cable back into that little guide there. Now this step is very finicky, so you could potentially bend this ribbon cable the same as the stock original one, but it's actually recommended that you try and bend it so that it sits underneath the battery casing. So there's a little gap there, obviously, between the latch and the battery casing that we removed before. And yeah, we're going to try and bend it and then push it in there so it doesn't get damaged in future. So I'm just folding it over here and just very lightly pressing a bend into the ribbon. And then hopefully, I'm just going to use my thumb and with a bit of persistence, again, this is a fair bit of trial and error. So feel free to try and also use the battery casing. You can sort of lift it a bit and that will help the ribbon cable slide underneath. If you sort of time it right. And it is quite finicky, but you'll get there eventually. And this will ensure it won't be damaged in future. And there you can see how it's sort of curled around there underneath. So that's what you're after. And okay, with that in, we just need to replace the battery casing screws. So there's 3 of them. It's the first one in. Second one goes in there. You can see the board coming to life already, which is good news. And the final screw down the bottom here. And there we go. That's most of the parts replaced. And we're just going to try and carefully close this back up. So just ensure that rail part goes in first, so you're just doing the reverse of what you were doing before. And there we have it, our buttons are working. So just obviously test them both before you go closing the case up. Maybe try and sync it to your Switch as well. And yeah, finally we're just going to replace those tri-lobe screws. Alrighty, and there you have it. Your repaired JoyCon. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next time.